What does it mean to be in a foreign country, at a school, with people from all over the world, and then going out to the locals to help for a good cause? This is exactly what we've done at UWC Costa Rica, and I'm going to take you through this journey that's quite literally a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So join me for the ride. So what is Community Action Week? Community Action Week is where we go and make a valuable contribution to your community. We did this across 12 different projects all around Costa Rica, making it super diverse. But why do we do this? The main objective of us going out and taking a week off academics is to deliver a positive social impact through sustainable community action projects. So where did we go? We went to Térraba, to the Broran community, in the southern part of Costa Rica, and this was part of the category Learning from Local Knowledge. So who did we stay with? We stayed with Diwo Ambiental, which is a non-governmental organization here in Costa Rica, made up of Costa Rican professionals focused on promoting sustainable development in vulnerable communities and companies in Latin America. And their main objective is to improve the quality of life of the people and the well-being of the regions. But what did we set out to contribute to the Broran community? As you probably noticed by now, there's a video running in the background of us excavating an area to make it more flat. We set out to build a greenhouse to help the hosting family that we stayed with, and this project was meant to go towards not only their self-supplying lifestyle, but also growing crops and medicine for themselves. First, we started leveling the area where we set out to build this greenhouse. This was both a challenging and very fun experience. But why was it challenging? In Costa Rica, the soil is really quite interesting. Since it's not just plain dirt, it often has a mix of dirt, sand, some clay, even some sand that is blown all the way from the Sahara Desert. But in Térraba, there's a higher concentration of clay, and we quickly found that out, since the dirt was not only dry due to it being the dry season, but also super hard to dig into. This meant that we had to use a lot of power to both not only flatten the area, but also move the dirt since it was super heavy. As mentioned, they're going to use this greenhouse to supply a nursery and also therefore food for themselves. I think that's quite interesting about the Broran community was that they not only use their own medicine, but also fall back on Western medicine for illnesses that are out of their capacity to treat. This means that they are not reliant on the Western world and therefore also go back to their own roots and enforce that they still have to use these medicines to make sure that they don't lose what creates their identity as being an indigenous community. Now moving on to day 2, where you can really see how much the area has changed. Not only looking at how much flatter the ground has gotten, but also that there's a lot of leaf litter and tree stumps laying all around. And that is because the tree in the middle of the area has now been removed, to make more space for the greenhouse and make it a more easier flattening process. One huge problem that we encountered since the tree got removed was that there was a big anthill under where the tree was. And now we had ants crawling all over our feet and sometimes even biting us. But that was the manageable part. One thing that was quite the contrary was the huge root that was still left from the tree, and that certainly did not want to leave the ground. The way we came over this issue was quite literally with the use of brute force. It almost took 30 minutes to get this root out of the ground. But through this process of struggling, we also came to the realization of just how much we value being with a team and being together and having the support from each other as well. One thing that we also started on as part of the process was to measure out the boundaries of the greenhouse. And in the meantime, all of us here digging, there was a project going on the sidelines as well. Another part of the group had started preparing the poles that would later be the corners and the sides of the greenhouse. Another thing that now had to be worked on was the holes for the poles. These had to be around 50 centimeters deep or half a meter. And as you could probably already have guessed based on how I described the dirt earlier on, this was no easy task. One thing that I've forgotten to mention is the abundance of rocks in the area as well. And when I'm telling you these rocks are big, I mean that. Some of them were the size that it took 2 people to move them away. But luckily when we're digging the holes, we didn't encounter any of the huge rocks, only the smaller ones. But this was still quite the challenge. Now let's slow it down and listen in on how it sounded at the workplace. And take note of the environment as well, as it's quite the unique spectacle. And since these videos are in normal speed, I want you to listen in on how it also sounded at the workplace and how we communicated.
No, sí, trabajé en proyectos y del APRE, para médico, del amparoso. Exactamente. No, pero es que no hace nada, tiene que estar con la mano. Sí, ahí está la asistente. ¿Cuánto? Yo creo que eso ya está, man. ¿Listo, Daniel? No, pésima. Do we have any idea what these are?
What are they?
I have no idea. Well, we can take them and ask. It could be like indigenous, but I hope it's not because we broke it.
Mi profesor de la universidad siempre decía, ¿saben qué? Es más fácil tener, es mejor tener a la zorra adentro que...
Your legs, Luke. Your legs.
¿Qué pasó?
Now we skip quite far ahead. As you can see, the poles have already been placed on the ground. And now only needs to be secured by putting dirt all around the base. Although that might sound quite easy, and so was our thoughts. This took quite a while since we also had to make sure that the poles were straight vertical. One thing though that really helped this process was a bit of water and some good old stomping. We now move on to the last part of day 2. And this all happens quite fast, so try and keep up with all the various things that happen. As you can see, we've now brought in the netting that's supposed to be the cover for the greenhouse. But getting that onto the poles was difficult, as the poles were way taller than all of us. Here we used a broom to push over the netting, and then stapled it to the poles after, to make sure that when we returned the day after to finish it fully off, it would still be there. Now as we start day 3, and the final day of the project, we can really see how much we've transformed the area and created something that we thought was going to take a lot longer. But all that now remains to do was some more dense and sturdy black netting to be put around the green netting. But also something to cover the ground and make sure when the rainy season comes around again, the water erosion doesn't wash it all away. The very last thing of the day was to help them transport the very first plants from another area over to the greenhouse. And after that, we all had the collective realization that we'd created this, and not only for our own enjoyment, but also to help out others. As part of this being a journey of making an impact on the community, we made a lasting impact that will help them still practice their own beliefs. And there include the use of their own medicine they still use to this day. And furthermore, it will also help them supply themselves for the coming future. Thanks for joining me on this journey. My name is Daniel, and I'm grateful to have been able to give you this story and give you some insight on what Community Action Week means to both us, but also the communities we help.